Hello, this is Juanita, and today I'm going to be talking about factory life during the Industrial Revolution. Uh, During factory life and the industrialization, people they didn't have good working conditions. The conditions were very harsh, and people got maltreated a lot. The mortality rate went up. Life expectancy went from like over 40 years to now 35 to 40 years because there were so many accidents in the factories. It wasn't good at all. You can see that everybody worked in the factories. You can see in the pie chart to the left how it was workers under 14, workers over 14, and both of them had a pretty nice percentage of their people represented in here. Also, you can see in the picture to the right how children work there, and these children, they look really raggedy, and they look like they're working really hard because that's how it was. They would work for like 14 hours long. Again, everybody worked, women, children, men. Anybody who could work would work in the working class. There were these people called the Luddites, and they were 19th century English textile artisans who protested against the newly developed labor replacing machinery. You can see in the picture to the right that these people, they are smashing things with this axe thingy. You know, they're smashing the machines. That was their desperate way of trying to stop the revolution. They would break into the factories and break all these machines. And they tried to petition Parliament to enforce apprenticeship, but Parliament wouldn't do so. In fact, they passed this law called the Frame Breaking Act, which made it illegal for them to do this. In fact, they made the consequence go as high as the death penalty. And you can see in this poster thing to the left that they're offering rewards for people who will turn in anybody who's seen Luddites and these trespassers. Next is the poorhouses. They were commonly known as workhouses, and they emerged from the Poor Law of 1834, I want to say. And these were tax-supported residential institutions. They were houses for the very poor people, the needy. So what you would do is, if you were very poor, if your family was very, very poor, you would sign up to go to one of these, and then if you were accepted, your whole family would be instituted. And when you went in here, men and women, they were split up, and their children were split up. So all the families were living separately. They were all split up. And also, it kind of resembled, you could see what it looked like over here. That's the picture of a workhouse institution. Now, it kind of resembled a prison of sorts because, I mean, you wore uniforms, you had cropped hair, you bathed only once a week with the other inmates, and everybody ate the same meals at the same time. It was very routine-like. The only difference from that in a prison was that, you know, you could check yourself out of this. Also, they made the conditions purposely harsh, very nasty, so that people would want to leave as soon as possible, as soon as they had enough money saved from work. Charles Dickens. Now, Charles Dickens wrote about the Industrial Revolution. He wrote about the realities. There's Charles right in the picture to the right. There's him. And in the left, we can see some of his books, like Oliver Twist and Hard Times. And these books, again, they spoke a lot about the realities of the revolution. Dickens, he was upset about the loss of individualism that society was facing, and that humans were becoming just mere factory hands, and they weren't appreciated for being humans like we were before. He was extremely opposed to a revolution. That's kind of obvious. And in his books, he wrote about the realities of child labor, rise of machines, overpopulation, etc. Like I said, hard times, Oliver Twist are some examples, David Copperfield's another example, and so on. Now the Chartists. The Chartists were working class people who wanted rights for the working class. They wanted political rights and influence. They drafted this formal petition called the People's Charter, and in it they listed 6 of their goals, which was universal suffrage for all men over 21, abolition of property qualifications for members of parliament, annual parliamentary elections, equal representation, payment of members of parliament, and vote by secret ballot. Now, when they presented this petition to Parliament, they did not accept. This. In fact, they rejected them. But so they didn't achieve their goals in the near future. But for them, I guess you could say that their goals were achieved since we have these things now. So they were achieved in the long run. And you can see a Chartist riot happening right there. And also, here's like propaganda for the Chartist demonstration. So this was like a great meeting that they had. And it was a really big protest. So there's the ad for people to come and join them there. Economic policies, well, the government now accepted the laissez-faire policies advocated in Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. So now they didn't have to, now the government didn't interfere as much. They didn't regulate the economy as much. They just went with the invisible hand theory, right, that supply and demand would act on their own if the government just let them be. So they advocated that. And also, there were people like Thomas Malthus and Karl Marx and Ricardo that influenced the economy a lot. Well, Thomas Malthus, he opposed population growth because there was a limited food supply, and he said food grew slower than population, so eventually we would all starve. And yeah, he said that the reason there's poverty is because there's too many people, basically. Now, Karl Marx, he didn't agree with this. He wanted better treatment for workers, and he wanted more humanized approaches to workers in factories and stuff like that. And then there was David Ricardo, who came up with this theory of iron law of wages, which is basically saying that people will have just about enough to survive of wages when there's too many of them. So his proposed idea was that you give people high wages at the beginning, and then with all this money they'll be encouraged to have more children, and so their children will so then they'll have so many people afterwards that they can lower the wages to like a bare minimum. And I think this is very well represented by the picture on the left. You see all the children working there. You see that there's more children and more people so that the wages can be lowered. And also on the right, I think it's a very accurate representation of the iron law of wages, because it goes with the whole idea that the poor will always be poor and the richer will always be richer, so the poor can never catch up to the rich people. And I think that's a good demonstration. Alright, that's it. I did this whole presentation on my own. My partner, she uploaded it in a separate video. She uploaded her part in a separate video. Thanks.